In this video, we're going to talk about element properties and methods. HTML elements can have different attributes assigned to them, like IDs, classes, or types. There are standard attributes for different elements, and when a browser identifies a standard attribute, a corresponding DOM property is created and assigned to the element. Some attributes are applicable to all elements, while some are applicable only to particular ones only. For example, ID and classes are applicable for all elements, meaning whether you have an input, an H2, a paragraph, you can add the ID or a class, while type property is applicable to input elements and buttons only. If you assign type to a div and try to access it, it will be undefined. So, let's explore some of the most important properties and methods of HTML elements. One of the most popular properties is called a class list. Let's try to add a few more classes to our H1. I added ABC and test1. Great, it also has one heading. Now, if we go back to the browser, let's try to access its class list. To do that, I'll try to target that element. So that's going to be document.query selector. And inside of there, let's try to target it somehow. We can target it by a lot of things. We learned about that in the last video. We can use any of the classes, the ID, the tag name, but in this case, since we have the ID that's specific, we can use the ID. So in here, query selector, and then we can specify our ID by using the hash symbol and then saying the heading. Now we're going to store that in a variable, const element, or L for short, and that's it. Now we have access to that element right here. Now let's try to use the class list to get access to all the classes. L.class_list, just like so, capital L. You can run it, and there we go. We get a DOM token list with all the classes that this element has. You can also try to target the class name property to only get a specific string of all the classes that that element has. Now we can also inspect the L.id. That should work like a charm. We get the ID, and also L.inner.html, just like so. All HTML needs to be uppercased. If we do that, you can see that inner HTML of our first heading is test. You can access all of these properties of absolutely any element on the website. Now, let's explore some of the most popular methods. For example, let's add a button. That button is going to be of a button HTML property and is going to say something like submit. Great. Now we first have to target that button. So I'm going to say const button is going to be equal to document.query selector. Now, since we don't have any other buttons on the site, I can simply say a string, and we're going to target it by a tag name of button. There we go. If I inspect it, we get back the button, as you can see right here on the page. Now, what can we do with that button? Well, first, we can use button.addEventListener. And that accepts two things. The first thing that it accepts is a type. In our case, since we're using a button, the type is going to be click event listener. And then we have to have a callback function on what is going to happen once we click on that button. So in here, I'm going to provide a callback function, and let's do something like alert. Alert, you clicked on the button. Great. Now, if I click that, if I press enter, and I click on the submit button, there we go. We get you clicked on the button. And anytime that you click it, this alert is going to pop up, because with the add event listener method, we added an event that's going to happen on the button click. Let's explore some more properties. Button.getBoundingClientRect. If you do this, this returns a function, because we are now talking about the methods. So what you need to do is you need to call it as a function or like a method like so by specifying the opening and closing parenthesis down here. If we do that, we get a lot of information. We get the height, width, left, and top values of an element related to the browser. That means that the width of the element is 55 pixels, the height is 21, and then all the other properties mean how far or how close is it to a certain position on the screen. You can see it is fully to the left. That means that our left property is 0. Moving further, another method is called hasAttribute. This method checks if an element has an attribute type or not. For example, our button doesn't have a type of button, so we can check that. We can say button dot hasAttribute, and then in there we can pass in the name of the attribute we are looking for. So we are looking for a type attribute, and the answer is false. We don't have it. Now let's try adding it. So I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna say type is equal to button. Now we have to specify our button element one more time, so you can use the arrow up to scroll through the commands where we selected that button to this one here. And then you can use the arrow up a few more times to get to this button.hasAttribute. Now, if I save that, you can see we get true. But we can explore the other method, which is called button.removeAttribute. And you can use the remove attribute to, well, you guessed it, remove the attribute. So in there we can type and click it. Now we don't know whether it removed it or not. So what we can do is check the hasAttribute one more time. And there we go, it's deleted, we don't have it. That's it, we just explored the most popular properties and methods of the DOM. You're gonna learn about so much more methods, but you don't need to learn about them now. When you choose your framework of choice like React or Angular or Vue, in there all the methods are going to be quite different from these ones. You won't have to access the element and then add the method. Everything is going to be much more straightforward, so I'm not gonna bother you with learning all of this right now.